Hi, everybody, and welcome to the webinar, Road to the Future Digital Workplace. I'm first going to cover a bit of some admin topics, and then we can go through the agenda. So we will have time for questions at the end of the webinar. If we won't manage to answer all the questions, we will reach out offline to all the questions and provide answers. This session will be recorded and it will be available on our website and on social media platforms. So going to the presentation, from a speaker perspective, we're going to have myself, Yunus Serdan. I'm one of the EMEA Digital Workplace Practice Leaders, and Peter Keen, EMEA Digital Workplace Director. Peter will be talking a bit about what is happening currently in the world with this whole social situation COVID has brought upon us and how it impacted the digital workplace adoption programs. And then further along, we will be touching base a bit on maturity roadmaps and how we can influence this this whole roadmap and this adoption of a new digital workplace. So I'm gonna drop it off to Peter to pick it up with the presentation. Peter.
Thank you, Unit. If we go to the next slide. All right, so yeah, I think I'd like to say welcome to everyone. Looking through the list of attendees, some of you have had the pleasure to actually meet in person, and I hope everyone who is attending you and your families are all safe and well as we start to come out of this lockdown period, certainly in Europe as we are today. As Unit says, the arrival of the virus in terms of the digital workplace has really thrown it into a very sharp perspective, because the ambition that was set out that our workers should be able to work anywhere at any time and be as creative as possible, it's no longer an ambition now, but it's actually become a clear necessity. And as we saw when we went into that lockdown period, if we move to the next slide, Unit. A lot of companies weren't really ready, particularly on their VPN side of things. So having the number of devices that they would need to get everybody home working, they weren't really in a position to do that. And about 35% of the companies that were interviewed by one of the analysts, that was their #1 challenge as they came through, as it was for many people. We ourselves in our business, we saw this as an impact going on in terms of the calls to our service desks. I think through that March period, we had about a 30% uplift consistently. Most of it was with employees who are now working home, a lot of connectivity issues in terms of how they worked. The slide you see now became the classic view of what you needed to do in order to get your workers working from home and starting to plan for the future. We went through exactly the same process ourselves. It certainly tested our business continuity plans as we shifted all of our agents out of our centres to a home working environment, which we did relatively quickly on that. And we now have all of our guys working remotely, working from home, which was a fair achievement in itself, and we didn't get any blips in the business as we actually did that. But it's a similar picture to what many companies have been through as they start to get organised with this. If we go on to the next slide though and look at the appetite to keep investing in our IT environment, and we see the confidence forecast. This is the long blue line as it goes up through the middle of the screen there, showing what it was in December, and then the two little lines coming off at the side, which were the more pessimistic and moderate scenarios as we hit recent months. And as is the trend, to use the term flattening the curve, we see that after initial spikes in terms of what the impact of the virus was going to do, we now see it's back on trend. And there's a number of things have driven this. We talk about the digital workplace piece, which is the subject of our discussion today. has come into sharp relief. In the future, we'll see many people continuing to work at home or work in rotation, so that if there's any future pandemics, people aren't caught up in that. Generally keeping the social activity that we need to do, and that close social activity probably is minimized as possible as we go forward where that can happen. Although we still need that interaction, as we're all kind of finding out now. A lot of acceleration in the plans towards automation. A lot of talk of many processes that are still taking advantage of labor arbitrage and be done in offshore locations. The view on that beginning to change, and where possible, accelerating the automation plans to effectively sort of repatriate those processes back to the more local environment of the organisation. But back to our digital workplace. If we look at the schemes for that, then this is a slide from 2018 from Gartner, and the one that we kind of all took on board in terms of how we would build out the digital workplace programs in our organizations, and particularly how we as a supplier would build our offerings towards you, our clients. And a lot of the focus was in that bottom area to start with. So we had the IT alignment piece in terms of a lot of investment in the technology and the underlying infrastructure to make all of that work as we moved to more cloud-based office working and things of that nature. So the tech was going in place. But that employee experience, that was probably the area that really hasn't been realized yet, all right, in terms of the amount of change that's necessary to then embrace that technology. And as such, at the top there, that business alignment isn't quite there yet. So we have technology out there, but are we getting that real return on investment yet is still the question. And if we go to the next slide, then next slide, please, Unit. Thank you. Then Gartner now sort of positioning that as this, what they see as a digital dexterity gap. So there's a lot of technology out there that's been put in place, but the ability of employees to actually exploit that isn't actually happening. And it brings a big drive then into your digital workplace is not just about IT putting the tech out there, but how you get people to actually exploit that and how you build those roadmaps of transformation to get the entire organization working that way. And that's what Unit's going to start talking about now and take us through our designs and the way that we approach that. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre. So again, from a transforming perspective, we're going to touch base a bit on how the current workplace is changing and how the future workplace will look from an employee perspective. Now, the traditional and current workplace is still a lot focused on physical offices, some virtual teams working together, mostly hierarchical teams, and limited automation in workplace where the situation proves that it can be worked. Now, from a future perspective, and what this whole situation pushed us into doing is in pushing a lot of virtual and smart offices, push a lot of virtual presence, and physical presence has shifted now to an on-demand type of approach. We no longer have hierarchical teams, but we have teams which are formed and working by project based on the skill sets they have. We now have humans and robots working together, and the whole life cycle of employment has changed from study, get hired and retire, to a continuous cycle of learning as technology is being pushed in, more services show up, and the whole business is being transformed. Now, the traditional workplace was still dependent on office devices. It was at the beginning of multi-channel and multi-device, while now we are looking at a full multi-channel environment, and this is where we're going forward to. A multi-channel environment when it comes to communication or reaching out for support, but also multi-devices. And touching on the multi-devices part, we move over to the infrastructure part, and this is where things take also a turn to the good. So we are now looking at matching the market demand, which is a lot of cloud services. We shift from identities being held in data centers to cloud identity. We no longer control devices, we control data, which gives us the chance to run to run concepts like machine learning and RPA on that specific data, and create a good broad spectrum of automations and data insights, and use data science to actually analyze that data. With shifting over from controlling devices to controlling data, we get the chance to introduce more and more bring your own device and choose your own device. So corporate environments will no longer enforce the devices, and the setup for the infrastructure will be in such a way that we can actually adopt any device, any choice of operating system, and of course all will be managed in the cloud part. Now, this change of nature of work does come with a need to balance structure and flexibility. Communication has to happen both synchronous and asynchronous, and we do need to have agreed team ethics in working. So the whole approach to managing remote teams is a bit different, right? You need a lot of the discussions with the teams, regular statuses, virtual kickoff sessions in agile meetings. And from a tool perspective, from a tech perspective and service perspective, we've seen a lot of services shifting focus. And on the right hand side of the slide, we can see a bunch of startups which cover most of the communication and collaboration landscape, keeping in mind that some of them started differently. For example, Discord, it started as a gaming community software and service, and it now is being picked up as a normal communication and collaboration software because it has the same capabilities as most of the big players out there have. For example, Monday.com, from a project management perspective, it's a good alternative to project management, again, for small and medium companies. So we see a high agility in adopting new tech, new services, and pushing that into the way we manage and the way we work with our teams. Now, personas is something we've been looking at and we've been talking about for the past years, but now I think all this whole persona approach is shifting, right? We still have the same type of people doing the same type of work. The only thing that changed is the way they work, right? So the executives and the contract workers or the gig workers will still run things the same way. From a workplace perspective, for task workers and developers which were used to using virtual workplaces, things haven't changed that much. But now with business users and specialists joining more and more the cloud approach to running applications as a service and everything, it applies more and more. So matching that maturity roadmap to the persona you have in your organization and running an analysis and identifying the types of personas you have can better fit a maturity roadmap. Now, from this perspective, we have to touch base on the experience level agreements. Now, operationally, we're still looking at simple and same KPIs. For example, when it comes to support, let's looking at self-help, the usage of it, reduction of incidents, successful knowledge searches, but all of these can be shifted towards an NPS score, which from a management perspective looks at the same KPIs but from a different angle. So would you actually recommend to someone our self-service approach to support? What is the service desk experience? What's the score for it? How do you measure that? And all of these management KPIs, they can be applied to applications like the normal KPIs, speed to log on, incident self-healed, can be transformed and should be transformed into an application performance KPI or experience performance indicator. And moving forward, same thing applies to the business metrics. Now, from an executive perspective, all of this translates into user experience. What's the NPS for our services? What's the NPS for our topics? And how does it translate into user experience? What is that the experience they're getting from the services? Now, with experience in mind, exploring artificial intelligence is one of the key points Peter also mentioned in the slide with the appetite for adopting technology. So We have some benefits which we can gain by using artificial intelligence, and one of them being speed up of tech onboarding. So using artificial intelligence, we can intelligently guide employees. We can assist them in on-the-job learning, touching base on the fact that the whole job cycle has changed. Now with continuous learning, we can benefit from that, and of course, decreasing cost and time on the onboarding services. Consistency made easy. Um, with artificial intelligence, you have a way to move fast without risking quality because you have a consistent way of communication with the business. Now, machine learning can assist. So using machine learning to analyze big data and assisting in complex requests, and also in the decision-making process, making decisions a lot more informed and less prone to risks. You can shorten resolution times again by powering a service desk function or a support function with machine learning. You have the benefit of using history of resolutions. You have the history of issues for the service or the employee, and that's where you can actually run machine learning and get insights on it. And combining that with powerful recommendation engines, you get the benefit in running the risk-free decisions and pushing proper resolutions. Now, of course, machine learning can also be used to assign tasks and work to the right people using skill sets, availability and expertise, and historical data. It keeps customers happy. You have instant smart answers. You use smart communication, and you have consistency in the way you're discussing and reaching out to the people, to the employees. Um, Adding bots to the workforce and utilizing capabilities like natural language processing and automatic ticket documentation can actually increase the level of experience they get with us. So everybody being able to talk in their native language with a AI instance is a huge bump in experience. And they can also, the whole bot approach can also act as an interface between knowledge, um, which is in place in the knowledge base, but also it can push self-service and self-heal towards the employees, shortening the time it takes us to actually run the resolution of it. Do more with less. So Gartner does predict that around 30% of support capacity will be performed utilizing machine learning, which means that we can switch staff to running and being a proactive strategic partner for the business, so that we, again, touching base on what Peter mentioned earlier, we now focus more on that business alignment area. For when we get back into the office, we do have a service which is now being a bit transformed, our digital cafe offering. The digital cafe itself is an on-site facility. It's operated by us, and it looks at providing a high-touch environment for customers, for employees, to have a good face-to-face interaction with someone that is a subject matter expert and has the right skills to actually resolve issues, but also assist you in learning how to better use that specific piece of tech or devices or anything. Now, this is for when we go back to the office. So it is a good value offering. We focus a lot on the experience the employee has with it, and it adds to the omni-channel approach, adding another channel and another method for employees to reach out for support. Now, with all of the previously mentioned, both by me and Peter, how we build the maturity roadmap is through our co-creation workshop approach. Now, this is a workshop which is focused on service improvement. The objectives we have with co-creation workshops is to assess where we are and what is the current model, ideate on future model, and organize ideas in a roadmap. And we'll run through an exercise in which we'll show you how a maturity roadmap will look like, and then we can also look at the study case on how it can impact some experience performance indicators. Now, who do we talk to? We talk with service improvement teams, right? IT departments and contract owners. We talk with business partners, and crucial to this whole co-creation workshop is the fact that we talk with employees. So we talk about tools, channels, and the persona approach, but also the cultural change. How will this impact the employees? What do they actually want? So for changes to actually be pushed through successfully, you need to have the desire, the awareness, the knowledge about the change, and also the adoption of it. So it's a 2-day workshop. We'll talk a bit about the focus on 5 methodology. Peter will run us through it so that we understand how this happens. We use specific forms and assets which come from our experience in working in this environment, and of course the people, process, tech pillars. And the whole approach to it is, again, building the personas, building the relationship between roles and personas, and actually building a journey for each service, and going forward to a future mode of operation which should push us into the desired direction. Now, moving forward to the maturity roadmap, I'm going to hand it over to Peter to talk a bit about the focus on 5 maturity and transformation roadmap. Peter?
Yeah, thanks, Unit. So some years back, we started our focus on 5 maturity approach, as many companies were looking at digital transformation, and IT departments were often just not ready for that. All right, relatively immature in terms of their operation and not ready to align well to the business. So we came up with our concept to focus on 5, which is how rapidly can you move up that maturity curve, as it were, and get aligned to the business in terms of your way of working with them. Now, of course, you know, today, as it were, over the last month or two, digital has become the business, right? If we weren't using all this technology, we would not be working well at all. And the point there is that the roadmap now for the digital workplace needs to be accelerated and get to that targeted way of working, so that we're getting the full benefit from those investments, and making those right investments now to complete the structure of it becomes extremely important. So we lay out, this is a fairly common plan that you're probably all familiar with. So you get that future mode that you're looking for, and then those target modes to measure yourself along the way to see how you're performing at that point. And it becomes very important because it is all about the outcomes that are going on. It's not just the projects that you're doing that says something is complete by a date, but it's, did it actually achieve what you're trying to do? So if we look at the goals of what we want in the on our roadmap, so our guiding principles are always, if we're going to put something into that transformation, what effect is it going to have? Is it more geared towards the that end user experience? So in terms of just the basic performance of services, they're all working effectively, and particularly that they're all working effectively from a home or remote environment. Is everything easy to use? Because support, you know, shadow support is kind of disappearing as well, because they're just not people sitting next to you anymore. And looking more at the effort score. What effort does it take for an employee to get an issue resolved and get moving again? And once more, the omni-channel approach becomes very important, because employees should have a choice of how they want to engage. And these days we're using just about every channel there is available to us in our communication between all of us. And it's making all of those effective, and as Unit says, applying AI where we need to as we go through that. Looking at the effectiveness, so does something that we're going to bring in improve the overall way that we do our operation? All right, it's taking us up that maturity curve. Our governance is better. We've got proper end-to-end views of how everything's working. We can see the data, and we've got data that we can make decisions on. And then, of course, the efficiency. So all the time we want to be optimized. We're not trying to overspend. In these days, we're looking at the same time as we're trying to improve the end user experience, looking for cost savings as well. And a lot of that driven around the automation piece of it. You know, anything where it doesn't need a human touch, then we should remove it as rapidly as possible. And a lot of this, we start to look at different measures. So we try and look at these outcome measures and go, right, after we've done something, what was the intent? And what measures we're going to change to actually show that? And some are simple measures in terms of we see data moving, but all of them kind of build up into, you know, what we'd call in the old days sort of KPIs, but these are more now sort of experience performance indicators, so kind of XPIs, building up to this whole view of where have we got to on that maturity journey, and have our employees embrace the digital workplace as effectively as they can do, and is that proving to be a real benefit to the business. So Unit's now going to take you through how we construct one of those and how we build the roadmap against it, and then a sample of that as he said before. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Pierre. So we start with showcasing our whole digital workplace concept, which is NEXT, Natural Employee Experience Technology, and the services which compose this whole approach. So we have split them in core services and value-added services, and you can see most of the ITIL processes being here, because we believe that you still need that ITIL framework. And we're going to touch base on all these products, right? So see how they can get arranged on a maturity roadmap, and how will that benefit from a process perspective, maturity, technology, and automation perspective. So how will we arrange that in a roadmap? And to Peter's point, we will look at an experience performance indicator approach to it. So how will the adoption of these services change the metrics we're looking at and the experience of the employee? So we start with a blank sheet of paper with 4 milestones on it. So we split the whole maturity roadmap into 4 big let's call them sprints. And in the first iteration of it, we start pushing core services, and with core services, I mean service desk, remote technical support, local technical support, and our cognitive platform, which is Sophie, and of course, a powerful ITSM solution. Now, from a process usage perspective, what we do here is we start to standardize processes. We focus on incident change and configuration management, and we add bits and pieces of quality assurance, knowledge management, and training, which are inward facing at the beginning, so that we can uplift the service and create a solid base for all the things we have to do. From a maturity perspective, we now implement the people process tech model. So focusing on all 3 pillars, we start tracking. We start tracking and communication on the incidents and major incidents happening within the organization. Omnichannel starts to show up, and we start running our shift left approach and shifting from local technical support towards the service desk and remote technical support. And co-creation workshops start to show up and start to happen. Now, moving forward to TMO 2. We start adding more services, and from a process perspective, we now focus on problem management, request automation using service portals, service improvement using our transformation management service, and new service adoption, which is also added in the transformation management service. From a maturity perspective, because we add data analytics, voice of IT, proactive workplace management software, we now start using the data analytics capabilities. We now start running repetitive incident analysis. Digital experience score is now in place. Service portals are up. We start again and focus on process standardization and automation where it makes sense, and we optimize the operational management processes. So service improvement governance is up, and co-creation workshops keep going, so that we can get more input and more feedback from service improvement teams, business partners, and employees. Now, moving forward to TMO 3, the third targeted mode of operation, we now start shifting focus towards employees and in the infrastructure part, right? So we push quality assurance, a modern management as a process, knowledge management as a service, demand and capacity management, of course, and of course, employee experience management from an end-to-end perspective. So with all these processes in place, we can now start working towards a zero-touch environment, running an autopilot approach to device deployment. We have the focus groups in the co-creation workshop, so now we are getting constant feedback. Joiner mover levers process is fully automated now using AI and using our cognitive platform. So we now decrease the time and the cost it takes to onboard resources and train them. Using corporate standards for knowledge, automated healing, and of course, digital cafe is now launched, and we move forward towards an omni-channel approach. In TMO4, which is actually future mode of operation, the whole service can be switched to an enterprise service management. So we now focus on business needs more and more. We adopt more business processes and we onboard more services from the business using the methodologies and the processes we have now solidified in the first three milestones. So enterprise communication support process, device well-being as a process, and evergreen IT should be in place by now. The digital cafe technicians and engineers are now switched to a digital coach approach, and we have more and more digital coaches showing up and being embedded in the collaboration of working teams. We have the focus groups fully active, and co-creation workshops are now bringing a lot of business insight, and we introduce social media support as a new way of maturing the way the support channel and increasing the communication and alignment in the community. So from a tech perspective, each TMO comes with adding some technology to it, but also pushing some automation, which will make it efficient and will increase the experience. So in the first targeted mode of operation, we push some of our automation products like e-contact, which is an outbound type of approach of reaching out to employees on specific incidents, and we do that for both for employees and for other IT departments, so we can assist in the incident management process and health of backlogs, health of the whole incident management process using a SOFI. E-password is there for automated password resets, queue management happens, and of course more automated chat flows show up. In TMO2, we push fixes on devices through campaigns which are happening proactively, and with more data coming back to us to understand what's happening, and with proactive problem management, you can actually implement a permanent fix and stop that from being an incident which requires a workaround or anything like that. Request fulfillment pushes forward device health on portal license management. In TMO3, as I mentioned, we go for autopilot, software deployment, and automation of the onboarding of employees. And in TMO4, we reach a maturity level where we have a zero-touch environment. Anything can be solved remotely without human intervention, and business-requested automations from co-creation workshops will happen more and more. So to Peter's point, the experience performance indicators, we are going to look on how everything will be influenced in each TMO by adding more and more services. So in TMO1, where we introduce core services, we see that first level resolution has increased, ticket cycle time has decreased, automated password resets are showing up, and we are now managing and controlling the major incident management process. Now, maturity-wise, we have grown. The organization grows a maturity from each TMO to the other one. Moving forward to TMO2, we introduce proactive problem management, and now we can see, and a digital experience score. So we can now see automated self-heal showing up, number of self-help instances are pushing upwards. We automate more requests, and now we can see portal usage being higher. And of course, measuring digital experience scores means that we can bump up maturity even more. As you can see in TMO2, most metrics have now improved. We are on the way to pushing omnichannel more and more. We go to TMO3, where we have reached some desired levels, with first level resolution being at 60%. Running continuous service improvement and shift left activities will mean that this will be a target which should be achievable constantly. But we see now a huge drop in tickets per end user and number of tickets. Satisfaction goes up, experience goes up now that we can focus on it. And average time to onboard, thanks to the joiners, mover, leavers, is now down to 1 week, and we started at 3 weeks. So we end up in a future mode of operation where we have reached maturity with most XPIs. The rest of them are still improving and working smoothly. So we have reached a 0.6. We started at 1.5 tickets per end user, 6,000 number of tickets where we started with 15, and ticket cycle time is down. Maturity is 4.5. So this is how a future mode of operation should look like from an XPI perspective, and this whole approach can be shifted and looked at from different angles, right? So NPS or anything like that. Now, to sustain all those services, we have our enterprise services capabilities, which cover the whole SIAM layer, which is there to manage and make sure that the processes are running smoothly. The whole enterprise services, so data center, end user, security, and as a service solutions. So this whole support layer here is focusing on the infrastructure part. We do focus on our cognitive computing solution, which is SOFI, to run intelligent automation and also agent augmentation and other automation activities, and of course service desk and local technical support. Now, from an experience perspective, we have 30 plus years of growth in our history. We have a global presence. Support is provided from all over the world in more than 35 languages. And from a solution perspective, we touch on the digital part, the application, workplace and infrastructure, and the advisory part. And our customers are from all possible verticals, from pharma, FMCG, digital health services, and manufacturing. Why us? We enjoy transparency, we seek efficiency, we are adaptable, and we aim for value. And these are some of the main pillars we look at when building partnerships with customers and pushing this maturity roadmap. So from a market recognition perspective, some of the ones which I'd like to mention is the workplace support and mobility support challenger recognition we've got for digital workplace of the future provider lens from ISG. From a Gartner perspective, we've been present more than 10 years in the quadrant. We are a niche player in the managed workplace services. And from an Everest perspective, in the digital workplace services peak matrix, we have been marked as a major contender by Everest. So for Q&A, I think we have a couple of questions. I'll just pick up maybe two of them, being conscious of time. So first one is, how will you manage social distancing in the digital cafe? And I don't know, Peter, you want to tackle that one? Should I do it?
But no, I can answer that. I guess it's in a couple of ways. I mean, clearly, depending on how organizations go back to work, some of that's going to be influenced in terms of their own internal policies. But in terms of running the digital cafe, we work extensively in the ServiceNow platform. They have a digital cafe module, as it were, and one of the neat things about that is that you can actually book appointments. So it means there wouldn't be queuing at the cafe. You can book an appointment slot that will be confirmed, and then you can go and meet and socially distance within the digital cafe. The other side of it is, and Unit talked a little bit about our digital coaching approach, which is, and we believe strongly in that, you've got to get people that understand how to take advantage of the digital platforms out working with the employees. That's going to take the change forward, as it were. And it is a coaching thing and not a training thing. And the point there is that from a digital cafe perspective, you could equally organize those to be remotely. So you could set up the video calls that we're all experienced with today. So if people are still working at home, rather than just a call to the service desk, you could book an appointment with a digital coach who would give you, sort of half an hour, as it were, running through some aspects of Teams and how to take best advantage of that and things of that nature. Thank you.
Okay, I was talking on mute, sorry for that. Next one is, okay, how effective is it to do social media support using the available services? If you don't mind, Peter, I'll pick this one up. So in FMO, we did mention, and I'm glad to see that someone picked up on it, that we push social media as a support channel. Now we've done this with several customers now, and we have a process to run it and a practice to do it, and how to increase adoption. So the whole idea of using social media support is touch to the consumerization part. So bringing the day-to-day life into the corporate organization. So software like Workplace by Facebook bring the same approach your personal Facebook account has to a corporate one, which means that you can integrate behavior which is already there, and you can actually just shift the focus of what you are talking about in that specific instance. So we've run several exercises actually with customers in which we created support functions, support structures within a Facebook type of approach to support. And it proved that adoption was higher because it came natural for people just to post a question in a group and have a collaborative discussion with either colleagues or people from the IT department into solving that issue. Of course, everything can be linked to ITSM software so that we can actually track resolution. We can still look at the feedback we get from it and how much engagement we have in the process. But it's a really good way of working it. And running that whole process. So the approach of that is, again, brings more maturity to the way we reach out to the business, and it opens up communication between IT, business, IT and business. I think we have one more question. What are the lessons learned throughout your transformation? So what we learned from our transformation? Good question. I think what we did learn through our transformation is that the key for it is to maintain agility and to maintain focus. And that's why within the TMOs, we have put that co-creation workshop so that we don't miss on opportunities to actually focus on the business and to focus on what business needs, but to also make sure that we can sustain that cultural change and that change management process in having them as early adopters and having them as champions to push this whole program forward. I, for one, think that the alignment between IT, business, and employees has to happen at all times. And this is one of the main learning points we've seen. Now, again, just pushing tech won't do it. So this is why I think a huge differentiator for our approach is the fact that we are now focusing on maintaining communication with employees and business up, and making sure that however this roadmap ends up in looking like, fits the business needs. I think we have time for one more question. Oh yes, will we be able to receive the presentation after the meeting? Yes, you will. And again, the recording will be also available on our website. So I see no more questions. I would like to thank you, Peter, for the effort, and thank you everybody for joining and spending this these 45 minutes with us, and looking forward to talking then maybe next time, seeing all of you. Thank you for joining.
Yes, thank you.